I'd like to welcome you all to the round table of June 26th. I want to start with a quote. Winston Churchill used to say, when you're going through hell, keep going. Wally Amos of chocolate chip cookie fame had a slight twist on that saying. He used to say, when you're going through hell, don't stop and take pictures. Keep going. Damn good advice. Today I'm going to talk about hell. Starting with a story that goes back to 1511, early part of the 16th century. A 42-year-old man grew up just outside of Florence, was elected the Secretary of the Florentine Republic. That was a big position, not a small one. Florence, in the early part of the 16th century, I would probably call the economic center of the world. Everything went through Florence. To be the Secretary of the Florentine Republic, you ran the world. Popes would visit him. Kings and queens would visit him. Do you understand how much influence this man, who grew up with modest means, suddenly had? Every word out of his mouth drew fear. If he snapped his fingers, people jumped. Power. Power like you can't even imagine. What comes with power and influence, guys? Someone tell me. Wealth. Lots and lots and lots of wealth. He was rich. Rich beyond his dreams. Power. Influence, wealth, what more can you ask for? And then in 1512, the Medicis returned to Florence. And the Medicis did what the Medicis have always done. Get their political enemies and punish the living hell out of them. That was the entire, basically, reason for existence for the Medicis, and they went after our hero. Oh, did they go after him. First, they strapped him up in a strappato. For those who don't know what it is, they bound his arms behind him, hung his arms from the ceiling, and as he sunk down in the weight of his body, his shoulders became disjointed. Constant pain, constant agony. Enough pain and enough agony to cause death. But the son of a bitch didn't die. So they accidentally dropped him 6 different times. Plop on the ground, hoping each time it would kill him. But the son of a bitch didn't die. Finally, they gave up. They gave up. They stripped him of all of his titles, all of his influence, and they warned anyone that you too will be convicted of treason if you even converse with this man. That you too will be convicted of conspiracy if you even talk to this man. From major influence that moved the world to 0 in 1 year. Wasn't enough. No. That wasn't enough. They stripped him of every dime of his wealth. Down to 0. One of the wealthiest men in all of Europe. And now he had nothing. That wasn't enough too. They broke his bones, they broke his body. And when he wouldn't die, they threw him on an abandoned farm and said, here, stay here, rot, and die. Wow. One day you're on top of the world, and the next day you're in hell. But when he was in hell, he kept going. One person would talk to him. One person, the entirety of Europe, would talk to our hero, his best friend, Francisco Vittori. The only man who was brave enough to resist the Medicis. And how did they converse? Well, every day he wrote a letter to his friend. It wasn't just a letter. He started writing instructions for living. Isn't that unusual? A man who was stripped of everything, title, wealth, and everything, would write notes about how to live your life, an operating manual for life. And Francesco Vittori started gathering and said, "My God, this is making sense. This is making phenomenal sense." And he started gathering all the pages. Every one, every day, a new page. The crux of the writing, the very center of what he wrote about was two words: Fortuna and Virtù. Not the way it's been translated for the last 500 years as fortune and virtue, because virtù has absolutely nothing to do with goodness or virtue. Nothing. Fortuna, he explained, is the chaos in life over which you have no control. Disease, war, macroeconomic collapse, social breakdowns, natural disasters. He described one after the next. And how much control? He asked his friend Francesco, how much control do you have over those events? Answer, zero, nothing. He went on to say, half your life is dictated by events over which you have no control. Fortuna. But Virtù is what you do about it when Fortuna hits. Virtù is how do you respond when you're in hell? How do you find the inspirational dissatisfaction? How do you find greatness from struggle? How do you find resolve and purpose when you're in hell? That is virtù. Some people open that door in the middle of winter, look out and go, there are icy streets. Some people say, where are my ice skates? That is virtù. That is the difference between fortuna and virtù. Which brings me to my first speaker, and this is a special pleasure today. One of the most legendary journalists, I believe, in New York history is Marvin Scott. If that name doesn't ring a bell with you, shame on you, you're an idiot. I want to see a show of hands. How many people in this room spent most of their childhood in the 60s and the 70s? Raise your hand. Most of the room. For those of you who didn't raise your hands, they really don't know what life was like in the 60s and 70s and 80s today. No internet. No computers. Well, how did you know what was going on in the world? Well, one, you could read about it in Life magazine 6 months after the fact. Or the tradition in my family, and probably every family in this room, for those of you who grew up in the 60s and 70s, we gathered around the television 10 o'clock at night, every single night. And for those of you who raise your hands, I will trigger a memory. I will take you right back to that moment in time with one single line. It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? And then we had a special pleasure every night. If you were from New York, Channel 5, then Channel 11, and even before that on radio, as I just discovered, we got to listen to Marvin Scott deliver the news in New York. When you listen to this man, you are not listening to the politicized, homogenized, pasteurized bullshit that you're listening to today. You were listening to honest, unbiased news, and you knew it when you heard it. No one had to question it. When this man spoke, you knew you were hearing the truth. And what he did so brilliantly is he wove it into the fabric of New York. And I remember sitting there as a kid thinking, I'm proud to be in New York. When you listen to this man speak, you are proud to be a New Yorker. I got to listen to him, 1965 blackout. I got to watch Marvin in the 1977 blackout. I remember the summer of the Son of Sam. Boy, was that something you don't like to forget. Every car was a threat. How do we get through it? We listened to Marvin Scott every single night talk about the Son of Sam. I remember when he delivered a seance at the Amityville Horror House. That was a fun one. That one is embedded in my head.
Still haunts me.
Me too, to tell you the truth. 3 Mile Island. I remember Marvin talking about it. Bernie Getz. I remember Marvin talking about it. They're making a film of his life. And when I say they, I mean the best documentarian in the country is making a film on Marvin's life. You've seen him here before. A lifetime friend, Ron Frank, winner of a Peabody Award, Emmy nomination. They usually refer to him as one of the best documentarians in the country. Bullshit. He's the best documentarian in the country. Second place is distant. And if you doubt me, right now on Netflix, there is a documentary called Remembering Gene Wilder. Please, if you haven't seen it, watch it, and then you call me, and then you tell me whether or not Ron Frank is the best damn documentarian this country has ever seen. You will agree with me, I assure you. I've been up here doing this for 35 years. I was just talking earlier in the meeting. Somebody I haven't seen in a quarter of a century. Felt like yesterday. 35 years is a long time to introduce people. I have had only one regret. I never got to introduce one of my heroes. Well, that changes today. A legendary journalist, Marvin Scott.
They shake New York. They move New York. And they tell their story to one man, Marvin Scott.
Down, that indicates it's a red alert.
Marvin Scott, WPIX senior correspondent, has been on the front line of history for half a century.
I'm a storyteller. And over the course of 50 years, I feel I've told probably in excess of 15,000 stories. I've interviewed in excess of 30,000 people. You feel you're being unfairly judged?
No, I'm the mayor of this city.
He's the king of comedy, or as Robin Williams calls him, the maestro.
Yeah, that was one of the great moments of my life.
Let me finish my intro, will you?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead, Marvin.
Thank you. Thank you
I
for
know your voice from television, and it's good to meet you.
What an incredible ride
I'm Marvin Scott in Washington. Marvin Scott reporting from Israel.
I'm Marvin Scott on the bridge of the USS Alexandria.
As much as I'm harnessed in here, I'm feeling my body lifting. There goes my glove.
Marvin had news in his blood ever since he was young, and it all started with a raging fire in the Bronx when he was 14.
And I had a dream of being a reporter. I grabbed my camera and I took a picture and I sold it to the New York Daily News. I was hooked.
He continued snapping photos, including the iconic Marilyn Monroe, which appeared in People magazine. And he has never stopped. His work has been exhibited at several galleries, and a book of his photographs is in the works. Marvin's rise in the business was remarkable. After a short stint as a radio DJ in the Midwest, he held a number of positions, including anchor, correspondent, and producer at CNN and WABC. In the print media, he was a feature writer for the New York Herald Tribune and a contributing editor to Parade magazine.
What has made me successful over these years? I would say, first and foremost, I've been honest. And a love and passion for what I do.
In 1980, Scott joined the Pix News team as a general assignment reporter. 1 year later, he was named co-anchor of Midday Edition.
The state capitol in Albany. I'm Marvin Scott.
Marvin's two children, Stephen and Jill, were youngsters when he anchored the National Midday Show and introduced them to President Jimmy Carter. Marvin has covered 6 U.S. presidents.
Special guest today is former President Gerald Ford.
And every mayor since John Lindsay. Marvin would make the Walk of Fame in the Bronx, a big honor for a kid who covered Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the 1960s. In the 80s, Marvin caught up with Britain's Prince Charles during his first New York visit.
Good New York food. It's not quite the Thames, but how was the view from the East River and the Hudson River? Very impressive.
On September 11th, 2001, he spent many hours on the news set, anchoring coverage of the Twin Tower terror attacks.
3 to 5 suicide terrorists were aboard each of those 4 airliners.
And he's won endorsements from police unions while reporting on their contract disputes.
Marvin Scott for mayor! Marvin Scott for mayor!
Marvin easily won the hearts of American troops when he traveled to Camp Anaconda in Iraq.
We are deep inside Iraq, in central Iraq.
He brought them bagels and hot dogs and Christmas spirit, along with TV reunions with their families back home.
I miss you, Daddy. I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. Merry Christmas.
In another historic moment today when Marvin Scott and Channel 11 cameraman John Fosse became the first members of the Western media to be allowed aboard a guided missile destroyer, Bazudershny, which was headed out to sea for the voyage back to Mother Russia.
A member of the WB11 family was at the New York Stock Exchange today, not to report for once, but to ring the closing bell.
Marvin published a book, As I Saw It, A Reporter's Intrepid Journey. Marvin reflecting on the stories that have stuck with him personally.
The Concorde took a final historic trip today. The Alpha Delta Concorde made its way up New York Harbor to its new home at the Intrepid Sea Air Space Museum.
We want to mention before we go that that Marvin Scott, our stalwart
Yes.
WB11 reporter, was also mentioned many times in today's ceremony. Why?
Well, because it was his idea. He
Yeah.
was having lunch with a British Airways executive, and from there, just things got rolling, and now...
Here it is. And now we got the Concorde here. You have lunch with Marvin, folks. You make things happen. There you go.
Marvin, you're a treasure, a living legend, a New York City icon. Congratulations on receiving the Governor's Award. Nobody deserves it more.
Delighted to be joining in the salute to my friend Marvin Scott. Marvin has done it all. He reports, he writes, he's done local news, he's done network news, he's written a book. Marvin, you're a credit to our profession and our craft, and I'm delighted to salute you in receiving this award.
This is a giant of news and journalism.
With 60 years covering stories of the tri-state, Pix 11's Marvin Scott is adding a new achievement to his resume, receiving a key to New York City.
Thank you, and thanks, Stephen. Thank you for those wonderful words. And it flashes back so many memories for me, going back to that blackout of 1965. I remember it all. I mean, you saw here in this video, I believe it was Mark Twain who once said, find a job that you really enjoy and you'll never work a day in your life. And that has been my mantra for the past 6 decades. Started off with that fire in the Bronx, And I was told to bring the pictures down to the Daily News. And I walked into a newsroom and there was this energy there. There was this excitement of trying to put out the next day newspaper. And I was taken by it. I said, this was exciting. And it was at that moment that I said, hey, I want to check this out, become a reporter. And I've gone the route. I worked print, I've been radio and television for the bulk of my career. It has been a journey, it's been an education, and it's been a trail back, going back and examining history for the last 60 years in New York and the world. I've been all over. I've been to areas of conflict. I've been to East Berlin, been past the Berlin Wall, been to Cambodia, in Phnom Penh, Iraq, Afghanistan. Probably the proudest achievement of my entire career are those 5 Christmas visits with our troops to Iraq and Afghanistan. That was a tremendous undertaking, and I bless the management at Pix 11 for allowing me to do it. And I also bless my wife for putting up with me with the phone calls at 4 a.m. to reach them over in Baghdad and in Afghanistan as well. And what the goal was, back before we had FaceTime, via satellite, we put them on live to talk to their families back in New York. And there was no better live television than that. Emotional moments. You saw one man over there talking to his family, and the tears flowed from both sides, from New York and over on in the area of conflict. We brought them, and it was, for me, the wonderful feeling was when a woman would give me a hug or a man would put his hand into mine and said, thank you for making a difference for my Christmas. And it was a journey each time. And my cameraman, Dave Kimmel, he went on 5 trips with me. And after each one, what we went through, we said we'd never do it again. Until a couple of months later, I'm on with the Pentagon and say, how about next year? It was such a rewarding experience. There have been so many rewarding experiences in my career. We have the ability not only to inform, but to affect change and also to help people. And the change it brought about was legislation a number of years ago. It came to my attention that there was some cheating on the standardized reading test. And I had one call and a second call, and I started making probes onto this, and I learned more that this was really wide scale. And went on the air with it. Once I revealed this, I had additional calls. There were other schools where they needed funding, and the funding was based on how well they did academically. And I revealed this, and Leonard Stavisky was a member of the state assembly at the time. He had hearings up in Albany, and I was a lead witness. And eventually, Governor Hugh Carey signed legislation making it a crime to give advanced knowledge of any tests to any of the students. And that's been in effect for like 50 years now. So that was one way of affecting change, bringing about change, bringing notice to people of things that are not right. Also change, we can help people. One of my proudest achievements was saving a life. And my wife and I were responsible for that. My wife is always on FaceTime, and she saw the story of a man who was desperately needing a new kidney, and she responded to him and said, hey, my husband's a television reporter, maybe he could do your story. Well, the timing of it was such that I did a story. It was around Christmas, and all this man, Brett Ashley, wanted was a new kidney for Christmas. I did the story, and as a result of the story, there were 12 potential donors. Unfortunately, none was a match. The 13th donor came through. Jonathan was a match. And 6 months later, Brett Ashley received a kidney. And it was such a wonderful feeling when he called, when we did a follow-up story, he looked me in the eye and said, Marvin, you really saved a life. So it's a rewarding experience. Not only am I someone who can just relate the story as Stephen was talking, and Stephen, you touched me with your words, and you said something about honest, unbiased, and I'm proud of that. And that's why I think I have survived in this business for so many years, because I have been honest the integrity is important. We've lost sight of that too much today in journalism. It's sad that the public has lost faith in what we say. There's too much opinion. And I think local news is your best outlet for news today because we deliver it straightforward. I mean, I really admire, you probably know Bill Ritter, who just left because has a health problem. But telling it straight facts, who, what, when, where, why, how. Rudyard Kipling's faithful or honest serving men. I used to say faithful, then my son corrected me. He said it's honest, five honest serving men. And that should be our mantra. That's what they teach us in journalism school. You want opinion? Go to Fox, go to MSNBC. You want the straight news? Go to local, go to Pix 11, go to Channel 7 or Channel 5. We'll tell it to you the way it is. And I think there's no reason for us to go beyond just telling the facts. There are so many stories. I could go on and I talk about the stories in my book. I've captured the more interesting ones I've done over the years. One stands out, my interview with Yasser Arafat. I was a contributing writer for Parade magazine for about 22 years. And I traveled to that region to do a story basically on the children of the PLO being inculcated to hate. And I had the opportunity to interview Yasser Arafat. I was given time with him, a half hour, I was told, on a Saturday night in a residential section of Beirut. Very little security. I remember sitting in a smoke-filled room. Everyone was smoking Marlboros, playing with their worry beads, sitting next to their Kalashnikovs, sitting in the basement, and my thought was, everyone got up as he walked out into the chamber, and my thought, I'm not getting up for this terrorist. I looked around, I said, maybe it's a good idea. I stood, walked into his chamber, and it was interesting. They had half a dozen copies of Parade magazine on the table there, checked out previous stories I had written. And it was arranged by Zodi Terzi, who was the PLO representative to the UN. I knew him here in New York. And I was given a half hour. And at one point I asked him if the children, the Palestinian children, were being inculcated to hate. And he went around and didn't get an answer. I believe I got the interview because Parade magazine at the time had a circulation of 70 million people. And I believe he believed he could get his propaganda across in this magazine. I wasn't going to let him do that. I kept asking. I asked the same question the second time about children. Mahmoud Labadi, who was his Harvard-educated PR guy, leaned over and he said, you asked that question again, the interview is terminated. Well, I continued another 10 minutes or so and came back with that same question, phrasing it a different way. He leans over, the interview is terminated. Arafat says, no, let him continue. So we went for another 15 minutes. It was beyond the time that was allotted to me. Interview ended, and I have to say, Arafat was very hospitable. I mean, we have all images of him. He seemed unkempt. I don't know if he showered that day or not. And it was interesting being with this man with the knowledge I had of the things he was responsible for, the terrorist acts, the hijackings. But he was very nice with me. And I think they knew in advance that I was of a Jewish background. I made sure they knew that. And I think it kept me safer because it would have been worse for an American Jewish journalist to have fallen into a difficult time in Beirut. As I left, I said, I think he was chairman, Mr. Chairman, I hope the next time I see you, it's in peace. And he handed me a photograph, which I brought with me. Photograph of a girl named Fatmi Palestine, taken from the womb of her dead mother, who was killed in an Israeli bombing raid in a residential section of Beirut. And I wrote this in my book, and I've said it ever since. To me, it sounded like he said, take this back to New York. It sounded that way. Take it back to New York. And I said, and he said, tomorrow, he said, peace in Palestine, in Palestine. So that was my interesting experience with Yasser Arafat. We talk about blackouts, we talk about Son of Sam. 3 Mile Island was interesting. I commuted to that by helicopter for 3 days. I remember the first day I went out there, not knowing much about it, and I said to the pilot, can you lower? We saw the building where it was. You know, I'd like to get a good shot. I want you to pull down from the tower and pull up and circle around it. My cameraman's leaning out of the helicopter taking the pictures. We landed. I saw the state police with Geiger counters on all the helicopters, and ours was registering tick, 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 tick. And my mother said, well, you should worry about it, you know, cancers. And I said, maybe 30 years. She said, well, we'll see in 30 years, you know, we're worry about it. I could go on and tell you stories, and probably my favorite story is about a character named Charlie Walsh. Matter of fact, it's such a great story. I've interested 2 movie producers in a potential film about this guy. He was a schlep from Jersey City. He had nothing. He lost his job in Wall Street, replaced by a computer. And one day he opens the mail. This is a day before ATMs. He opens the mail and he sees he's got $100,000 added to his bank account of only $1,200. He goes to the teller and is this correct? Yes, Mr. Walsh, that's the balance you have. He goes home. He checks again, repeatedly going back to bank and different bank branches, and confirms it's $100,000. Well, after a month, he gets another bank statement, and there it is. At that point, I think there was the television series called The Millionaire. So at one point, he fantasizes and thinks, well, maybe that's where I got it from. And after about a month and a half, he gets brazen and he starts making withdrawals. First, he withdraws his $1,200, and then he dips into the money that was the $100,000. Said he was taking cash out to buy for his coin collection. After a while, he takes all out except $89 in change. After he's brought back to New Jersey, I had to do an interview with him. Charlie, why'd you leave 89 in change? I didn't want to close the account. He takes off on an odyssey that was incredible. He becomes somewhat of a champion. He stops at one place in Pennsylvania, and there's a waitress who's losing her apartment with her children, and he leaves $1,000 tip, and he takes off. So he was a do-gooder as well. His hope was to open a mom and pop store somewhere in Portland, Oregon. He travels cross country, and he stops in Las Vegas. In Las Vegas, his greatest expense beyond the Ford Fairlane he had bought. He used Ford Fairlane, and he stops. Charlie, did you gamble? Hell no. So I'm shoving all that money down the holes? No. He felt the greatest sense of accomplishment. He went to a nickel slot machine, turned the nickel into $30. He felt the greatest sense of accomplishment of the $100,000 he got from the bank. He travels on, and finally he goes to Portland. He gets into Portland, and he was living as frugally on the lam as he did his entire life. He had no one in his family. His mom had passed away. There was a foreclosure on his home. And he stops in Portland, and this time, instead of staying in a cheap motel, he decides he's going to go into a hotel. But he wouldn't put his car in the garage because it was too costly. He leaves the car in the street. At that point, the Portland police had new equipment in their cars to check out license plates. And they see a New Jersey license plate. They go, he's wanted by the FBI. They pick him up, and Charlie, are you Charlie Walsh? First he says no, then he admits to it. And then he says, I was trying to find him getting false ID. The FBI agent said, you could have found it easily at the library. It's in the books, I'll tell you that. They brought him back to Jersey City, and he became a hero. People said, Charlie, you should have got away. You should have got away with that money. And they wanted to make him the Grand Marshal of the St. Patrick's Day Parade. Sadly, Charlie passed away. He had cancer, and I spoke with him several times. We had an option on it for a film. His story is an incredible story. So that's the Charlie Walsh story. I can tell you the story. One of my favorites. Have you seen the film of the Kennedy assassination? All of you seen the horrible film? Well, the film was taken by a man named Abe Zapruder. Abe Zapruder was a dress manufacturer in Jennifer Junior's in Dallas. He loved John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And he was going to bring his camera that day because his office was right off Elm Street where the motorcade was coming. He forgot the camera, and his secretary said, "Mr. Z, when are you going to have another chance to see the president? Go back home, get the camera." He brought his camera. He went down to a spot on the grassy knoll where there was a concrete abutment. And he leaned against that to secure himself, and he had the camera rolling as the motorcade came down the street. And then the shots rang out. The camera was rolling. And if you've seen the film, he's very steady with it. And he held it. He told me he was frozen after he saw that shot that blew off the president's head. Mr. Z, I got to Dallas to do 2 stories on the mutual broadcasting system at the time. I was going to do a story, Shadow of Doubt, about the conspiracy theories. And I was going to do a recreation. This was 3 years after the assassination. It was an anniversary piece. And I wanted the documentary to be in sound. So my idea was to get into a cab at the airport and have the cab driver talk to me as he saw things going down the route. Charles Parham was his name. I can't remember the name from yesterday, but Carl Parham, I remember, was the cab driver. And he came out of Central Casting. He was wonderful. And I was going to go to each stop and pick up an interview. So we stopped at the area where Abe Zapruder was standing, and that's where on the video, on the audio tape, I cut to Abe Zapruder. And then from there, we went to Parkland Hospital, where I did a story in Trauma Room 1, just talking about that. So that was a special moment. And Abe Zapruder talked about, he influenced me about, I know there's still the controversy, was there 1 shooter, 2 shooters? From what he told me, I still feel there was 1 shooter. Was there a conspiracy? That's still open. But there's no question there was 1 shooter, because where Abe Zapruder was standing, he was 800 yards from the school book depository building on the 6th floor. And the conspiracy theorists say the second shooter was behind a fence on the grassy knoll, which was only about 400 feet where Abe Zapruder was standing. Abe Zapruder and his assistant, Marilyn Sitzman, who was 30 years his junior, heard the same thing. They only heard 2 shots. They don't refute the Warren Commission saying there were 3 shots. They heard 2. He said he was traumatized after that 1 shot that blew off the president's head. He said he doesn't know how he stood there so long. It was interesting how I got the interview with Abe Zapruder. According to the 6th Floor Museum in Dallas, he only did 5 interviews in his lifetime. 1 the day of the assassination on a local TV station. He did the Warren Commission. He did the Clay Shaw trial. He did Manchester's book, and me. And when I arrived in Dallas and got him on the phone, he said, "Mr. Scott, please, I'm honored that you want to do an interview, but I don't do interviews, please." He begged off, and he was very complimentary, and I engaged him in conversation to the point he was interviewing me. How did I do it? I knew he came from an Orthodox Russian Jewish family that lived in Brooklyn. I'm a kid comes out of the Bronx. So I got into the conversation. I said, "Mr. Zapruder, hey, you're from Brooklyn. I'm from the other side of the tracks, the Bronx." And at some point, I think I used a Yiddish word, and he said, "Epis, Jew?" I said, "Yeah." And after I said, he said, "Can you be here at 2:00? That did it. I wrote that in the book, and that's what got me the interview. Afterwards, I had intentions of taking him and his wife to dinner. Wouldn't hear of it. He wanted me to come back to his house. He wanted his wife to meet a nice Jewish boy from New York. So we sat, we had drinks, we shot pool. He pulled from his cabinet a camera which Bell and Howell gave him, unopened, because he gave his camera to them for their archives. He said he'd never opened it. He said he could never put his eye to the viewfinder again. So that's the story of Abe Zapruder, Charlie. I can go on and tell you stories. There are things that have said. Sophia Loren was one of those moments for an interview. She was gorgeous. She really, and I asked her at one point, I said, Sophia, if you were before a kindergarten class and they never heard of Sophia Loren before, what would you tell them? Who is Sophia Loren? She came back. A mother. My boys mean more to me than life itself. She didn't want to be known as a beautiful actress, as a sex symbol, but she wanted to be remembered as a mother. Things that are said, quotes. I knew a mobster named Frank the Bear Bastel. In the book, My Life in the Mafia, he's identified with at least 18 murders. Never convicted on one. Got him on hijacking, burglary, everything else. I got to know him. He wanted me to do a story. It was going to either give it to Chuck Scarborough or me, and he decided to give it to me. And I met him one night at a place looked like a back lot from Universal Films. There was a small building, there was a railroad station, and here was an old bar turned into a restaurant. I go out there with my news director one night, and my news director says, hi, I'm Bear. They call me Bear because of my size. Bear was an interesting character. What he wanted to tell me was the government was taking care of a lot of mobsters like him, putting them up in hotels, giving them dinners, setting them up with women, so they would turn evidence at their trials. And that was the story he wanted me to tell. So I got to know him. And over a period of years, I would deal with him, and he was in Lewisburg. And he sent me a note after I received an Emmy. He sent me this nice note. And what do you think is a salutation for a man who allegedly killed 18 people? After he says, Marvin, you know, congratulations, keep knocking them dead.
Oh my God.
I'm not making that up. Oh, God. The Martin Luther King story was 1966. In the book, I say, Being with Martin Luther King and Life and Death. It was after James Meredith was shot in Hernando, Mississippi. He survived. But all the top guns in the civil rights movement picked up the march. Martin Luther King was there. I had met him previously when he got the Nobel Prize, and he had a press conference in New York. So he knew who I was. And I joined the march for a period of a week. And at one point along Highway 51, they took a break, and I went across the street on a steamy hot day to a motel to make a phone call to give a report. Left the motel, went to the vending machine, picked up 2 ice-cold Cokes, put one in my pocket, the other in my hand, walked across the street. There was Dr. King sitting on a mound of dirt. Oh, he was alone. And Dr. King, can I join you? Oh, sure. Sat down for a few minutes. Maybe we were sitting there 8-10 minutes and doing a radio interview with him, which I found recently. I save everything. And one point I asked him, there have been so many attempts on your life, Dr. King. Why do you do this? There was a pregnant pause, and he looked at me and he said, for the children, for the children. And it's always remained with me. And it was just, I mean, he talked about the future. He saw that there would be a day that there would be a black president. And he said it was a matter of time. And I think a lot of what he had hoped for and worked for has been accomplished, but there's a lot more that has to be done. I can go on. I don't know if I'm, huh? Which one?
I'll do a quick wrap.
All right. Let's see. What have I missed? I put some notes. Martin Luther King, Golda Meir, Yes Arafat, Richard Nixon. Oh, Dog Day Afternoon. Did you see the movie with Al Pacino? Okay, Dog Day was John Woodward's. He got out of prison, and the provision to stay out, he was in a halfway house, and it was the proviso was that he get a job. So here I'm doing a story, we're walking down the street. So, John, what is it? He's talking about different things. People don't want to hire me, I'm an ex-con, and blah. He said, well, what kind of job do you want? He said, well, I think I could be a bank teller. I think better than that, I think I could be a bank security guard. What better reference than the fact that I held off the FBI and New York police for 3 days. That was John Waterwitz. Oh my God, so many stories. Read my book if you can get it, if it's still out there. Have I missed anything that I can share with you? Marilyn Monroe. This is before I really got into business. I was a kid, and Marilyn Monroe was the opening star for the opening out of the circus at the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus. And I said, oh God, I've got to see this woman. How do I do it? How am I going to finagle this? I go down to Madison Square Garden and I say, hey, show my high school press pass. Can I come in for the first night? Taft High School in the Bronx. Oh yeah, okay. So my friend Danny and I, we got in, and there we are. I wore a nice sport jacket, looked good. There I was with the paparazzi. I was no threat to them. And here I am, taking pictures of Marilyn Monroe. And at one point, she's walking, after she's getting set to get on the elephant, she got on a pink elephant to ride at the center stage. And she's walking towards me, and suddenly I hear her say, is this all right? I think she's talking to someone. She was talking to me. Yes, Miss Monroe. I got 8 incredible pictures of Marilyn Monroe. 4 of them were just auctioned at Heritage Auction House. And I just replaced the big one, 40 by 50 of her on the elephant, which is over my desk at home. There are stories and stories. There's Jackie O, when she had a trial against Ron Galella. I covered that. I knew Ron in a documentary on Netflix that was done on him. He tagged along her too long, and she had a suit against him, and he had a suit against her. And I knew the lawyers, and I said, hey, I want to speak to Jackie. So the lawyer said, okay, Marvin, I'll allow you 1 question after today's proceedings. So I said, great, here I'm going to get an exclusive with Jackie Onassis. I stand out there, and it's not only the question, it's how you ask the question. I stupidly asked the question the wrong way. Oh, Mrs. Onassis, are you pleased the way the trial is going? Yes. I did a follow-up question, and the lawyer said, Marvin, we said 1 question. That was my exclusive 1-word answer from Jackie Onassis. So I could go on with stories. I have so many to tell, and I love telling them. Stevie Wonder, Liberace, I got him to play the piano for me. He played Mac the Knife as Mozart would have played it. 45 seconds, incredible. So many people. I think I could go on, but I think that's it. Stephen, thank you so much for your beautiful intro. And
thank you, Marvin. Marvin didn't say, I don't know if he mentioned it, he's a 14 Emmy Award winner, 14 Emmys, Governor's Award, Lifetime Achievement, and a member of the New York State Broadcasters Hall of Fame, and he's still working. Our proposed documentary film is going to be based on Marvin's book, and obviously Marvin is a great storyteller, as you heard. This will be a approximately 90-minute documentary that we intend to sell to a streamer, most likely, such as Netflix. We already have access to the enormous WPIX archive, so we're already 1 step ahead of the game because we're going to include the story of New York City as well as Marvin's story, because we're following his career along the history of New York City from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way to the present. Investors for us in this project will recoup or qualify for a tax write-off and receive executive producer credit. on the screen and throughout its publicity campaign. We will first distribute, our intention is to distribute this film through film festivals. We've had a bit of success with that, with my film Remembering Gene Wilder, which is actually no longer on Netflix. I think the contract ended. But if you're interested in seeing it, I will send you a link. You just contact Stephen and I will send you a link. So we expect this would create a buzz in film festivals, and then we would hopefully make a deal with a streamer or a broadcaster with the intention of it getting picked up as a sale. And that's it. Thank you.